So far, I've described how to subclass the async task class and how to add your own methods to execute code in the background and to update the user interface thread whenever you're starting or finishing the task. Now, I'll describe how to publish information to the main thread while the background task is executing. While you're running do in background, you can call a method called publishProgress, and you can pass in parameters. Those parameters will then be passed to a method called onProgressUpdate. This is like the onPreExecute and onPostExecute methods. It has access to the main threads and can change the user interface to report information to the user. I'm working in a version of the project called Progress, which picks up where the last project left off. I'll place the cursor inside the doInBackground method before I return a result, and I'll create a for loop to iterate over the parameters array. When I use the for code template in Eclipse, it guesses correctly and iterates over the params array. First, within the for loop, I'll call that publishProgress method. When you call publishProgress, you'll pass in a set of values. Just like when you call execute, you can pass in a comma-delimited list. The data type of the values is determined by this generic declaration in your subclass declaration. I said that my progress type was string, and so I can pass in string values to the publishProgress method. I'm going to pass in a literal string of working with, and then I'll append the current parameter using array syntax, params, bracket I bracket. Now when I call that method, that will result in calling the method onProgress, and I need to override that method. So I'll move the cursor down to the bottom of the code after onPostExecute, and I'll override onProgressUpdate. I'll get rid of the comment and the call to the superclasses version of the method, and then I'll call my updateDisplay method. That's on the main thread, and I can call it from here, and I'll pass in the first item from the values array. Notice that when I call publishProgress, I'm only passing in a single value. I don't have any commas, and so I know I'll only get one value here. So I'll save and run that code, and I see that I start the task, I work with each of the parameters in turn, and then I complete the task. Now, to make this a little bit more dramatic, I'll add in some pauses using thread.sleep. This is a classic way in Java code of faking long-running tasks. I'll use the thread class, which is a member of java.lang, and I'll call the sleep method and pass in a value of 1,000 milliseconds, or 1 second. The sleep method can throw an exception, so I'll use a quick fix and surround that with a try-catch block. I'll save and run that code again, and now when I run the app and click the action bar item, I see starting task, and then I see each of the parameters executed one at a time, followed by the pause, and then the task complete at the end. Notice once again that I'm not trying to access the main thread from within doInBackground. I only do that from onPreExecute, onPostExecute, and onProgressUpdate. I'll show you one other thing you can do that's not really related to the background task directly, but is a common user interface strategy in Android apps. And that's to use a widget called a progress bar that you place on your activity layout. So I'm going to jump to the layout and look at it in graphical layout view. And in the Form Widgets category in the palette, I'll drag in a progress bar labeled as normal. And I'll drop it into place so that it centers horizontally and vertically in the layout. Now I'll go back to the code view, and I'll see that the progress bar widget was assigned an ID of progress bar 1. I'll save the layout and go back to my Java code. Now there are a number of different ways of using a progress bar, but the default approach is to use something called an indeterminate progress bar. It's not really telling you how far along a task is, it just tells the user something is happening. and it shows up as a little rotating circle wherever you place the widget. To be able to easily affect the progress bar object, I'll first declare a reference to it, and I'll set that up as a field of the activity class. I'll name the reference variable PB. Then in the onCreate method, I'll set up that reference with PB equals findViewById, and I'll reference r.id.progressbar1. I'll be sure to add the casting, and now I have a reference variable I can use to affect the appearance of the progress bar. As the app starts up, I want to make sure that the progress bar isn't visible. So I'll add this code, pb.setVisibility, and I'll pass in a constant of the view class called view.invisible. You could also accomplish this with an attribute in the layout. Now, I'll change the visibility of the progress bar as the task is starting and finishing. I'll go down here to my async task declaration, to the onPreExecute method, and within onPreExecute, I'll once again call pb.setVisibility, and I'll set it to view.visible. Then I'll go down to the onPostExecute method and call pb.setVisibility, and I'll pass in view.invisible. I'll save those changes and once again run the code. Now when I click the action bar item, I see my progress bar appear in the vertical and horizontal center of the screen. And each time I click the action bar item, it reappears, doing a simple animation to let the user know that something is going on in the background. The progress bar widget is a great little tool just to let the user know what's going on. There are other ways to use it and to style it, but I'll stick with this simple default presentation for this sample app.